Hello and welcome to the October edition of Beebe Book Buzz. We are glad to have you here today. My name is Karen Stern. I'm the head of reference at the Beebe Library, and I have with me the head of youth services, Casey Chwico, and the assistant director, Jackie Powers. And we are excited, as always, to bring you something that might be your next favorite read. I also wanted to let you know just quickly about another book-related event coming up, which is our local author fair coming on November 18th to the library. In the afternoon, you can come and meet, I think it's 12 local authors who publish a range of things from children's to adults, illustrators as well as authors. And they'll be there to sign and sell their work and share them with you just in time for the holidays to sell to you, so that you can buy something for those on your wish lists. And we hope you'll come along and join us. It's just a drop-in event. And with that, we'll start today with Jackie, who's going to talk romance.
I don't usually go first. I don't feel like
No, you're not usually first.
So I brought two books that look alike. That's why I chose them. It's not. I'm going to talk about two romances, which I don't do very often. I read romance, but very selectively. It's a very particular type that I like.
Well, that's why it's good that you're recommending them, because you're selective.
I'm choosy. So the first one is Hello Stranger by Catherine Center, the other, The Wake Up Call by Beth O'Leary. So Hello Stranger was the first one I read, and this is they're both kind of similar in that they're both kind of modern. Like the characters are modern, they have modern problems. This is not Georgette Heyer. There are no like Highlanders or Vikings. We're different.
Regency.
Nope,
costumes,
none of that.
Or
There is not a Duke in sight.
Nope.
But so in Hello Stranger, which is her like third or fourth book, I think, and I think this one is her best so far. The main character, Sadie Montgomery, is a portrait artist, and she's just gotten her big break. She's finally a finalist. She has entered this competition for years and finally gotten chosen. It's like a national portrait contest or something. And so it's a big deal. And this is her chance to kind of prove to herself, but also to her family, from whom she's a little quasi-estranged, that she can do this, that she can make a living as an artist, instead of being the doctor that they sort of expected her to be. So that's like the first paragraph is like you find out that she's in this contest. And then cut to, there's a couple of little scenes, and then now she has discovered through a course of events that she needs fairly immediate brain surgery.
Oh, wow.
So,
drama.
Yeah, it's yep. So the surgery goes really well. And so she has to do this before the piece is due for the art, the portrait contest. Like the doctors are like, this really can't wait. You have to do this. So they do it, and at the end, what happens is the surgery goes well, and then she suddenly discovers that she has what everyone is hoping is a temporary condition, but she's face blind, which is unbelievably interesting and not ideal for a portrait artist to not be able to see faces.
Oh, okay, right.
But what makes this book really stand out is this aspect. I mean, this is everything. The author is extremely sensitive about it. I mean, it's dealt with in a very respectful way. It's not made. It's not a
played up for laughs.
Played up for laughs,
yeah.
Exactly. It's not that at all. It's really interesting. It's really well explored. It made me sit there and like Google it, because I was like, what is this really like? But she taught, so you follow this character as she's like working through this incredible condition change that she has to get used to, because they have no idea how long it's going to last. It could be gone the next day when she wakes up. It could slowly over time go away. She doesn't know. But so you're following her really growing, because I mean, like when you can't even see your own face, like it's like these things that you take for granted that it's just a really interesting exploration of the entire concept of it. And what I discovered, and I don't know if she says this in the book as Sadie is doing research, but a pretty large population in the world is face blind, and most people who have it don't know. They
Right.
don't realize that everyone doesn't see things the way they do. So they have other ways of identifying people. You know, obviously your voice or your the way you walk or like your hand movements or I don't know. So she had to kind of like develop all of these skills.
Right.
So, but there's a romance.
I was gonna say, where's the romance?
Where's the romance? So she
the doctor,
acquires.
right?
She acquires no. Well, sort of. No. She acquires 2 love interests. One is a neighbor, and one is her dog's vet. So,
Oh, okay.
and so you're sort of seeing these relationships unfold, and how the face blindness plays into that.
Yeah.
And so she's working through her extremely complicated parental issues, and then including coming to terms with the death of her mother. So her mother had died when she was in high school, and she's really never.
There's a lot going on in this book.
There's a lot going on, which is why the romance is there, and you know because it's a romance, we're headed for happily ever after.
Right.
But the road there is not. It's not smooth. It's not
Right.
trite. It's not. The people are real.
So there's
There's a lot more story to it. They're flawed. They're very 3-dimensional. You see her grow and change and like really mentally develop. But you're still reading it kind of in the sort of safe knowledge that it's going to be okay because
it is a romance.
It's a romance. So I really like again just for the face blindness part, like it's worth reading. It's very, very interesting. And so, aside from the covers, Beth O'Leary's The Wake Up Call is very different. It's a little bit more of a traditional romance in that there's not like an aspect to like the face blindness that sort of separates it. I will say I've read all of her books. This was probably not my favorite, but I still enjoyed it. There were a couple others that I think her last one I liked the best. But so she's a British author, and she I think because you read a couple
The Flat Share.
The Flat
I
Share.
love The Flat Share. Yeah.
Was the first one. They're usually a little bit. There can be very clever. The last one was extremely clever. There's usually kind of some kind of twist. This one does have that, but it not quite to the level of the other ones.
But she also deals with real life.
Yes, and in the same way, the characters in this are flawed and complicated, and it's not straightforward. And again, you're seeing this all through the lens of, but they'll get together at the end. So it's still very comforting, but their sort of journey feels a little bit more real.
Yeah.
So this one, the 2 characters, Izzy and Lucas, are concierges at this kind of boutique hotel in the English countryside, and because the hotel is kind of floundering financially post-COVID. I like when they mention COVID because we all remember it. Yep. They're trying to work together to save it effectively, and so it sort of brings them together. It's a very like haters to lovers, like that trope.
That trope.
And if you like that, it's well done. It had like real vibes of the Hating Game, Sally Thorne's The Hating Game, which I think they made into a movie. Really like same vibe, the kind of quirky, small, sparkly girl, Izzy, and then the kind of tall,
dark brooding,
buttoned up brooding man. Like it's very like yeah. But the people are complicated, and they both are not perfect, and you watch them work through it all, and it's still very well done as romances go. So
I think it's great to highlight that type of romance because there are more and more of them out there. Like it's not.
That's why I've started reading romance because I want that little bit more of the. I generally like the more modern ones and more of the like. I mean, it's still like there's that element there's certain like kind of beats and there's gonna be the happily ever after, but the way that they get there and the complexities of it.
So like it used to be the trope that like there would be a miscommunication and like this book actually does have an element of that, but it's done differently. But it's like like if the one person would have just said
and when you find yourself going all the way through the book going, come on, just say it. Just say it. Just say it. And when that happens too many times, that's when I'm out.
That's right. And neither of these are like that at all. I mean, definitely not the Hello Stranger, but this one's not either. They're both generally honest with each other. They think they're just sort of saying different things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I've gone on to
Because there are ways to do that miscommunication thing that works and makes
That
sense
works and
more
is
than just
believable.
I'm just not going to tell them. Well, but why? Why aren't you going to tell this person you supposedly really care about? Like,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's so true.
Yep.
Yes.
So true.
So those were my blue books.
Those are your blue books. Oh yeah, and if you were interested, there's on our website right now. There's
That's right.
There's a little thing under our new buzzworthy feature on the website, which is all about covers that look the same, and it's quite a phenomenon. So
when you see them all together, it's really interesting.
check it
It's
out.
a little
at,
disconcerting when you see them.
wakefieldlibrary.org under the heading buzzworthy. It's right there on the front page. You'll see the article about that.
And once you start looking for them, you will see them everywhere.
Yes,
Yeah.
you won't be able to stop
Yeah,
seeing them.
you'll see 'em
which
everywhere.
is the world we live in.
Yeah.
Anyway, Casey's going next.
All right. I am gonna switch gears in quite a bit. Not only is
Entirely.
my book green, not blue.
Yes.
This is Kate Elliott. It is an adult book. It's an adult fantasy. Kate Elliott has been writing for quite a while. This is actually the first of hers that I have read, but it's called The Keeper 6. I actually read it via Libby, and my understanding when I had seen it advertised and when I decided I wanted to read it, I had not really paid attention to the fact that it is a skinny little book.
Mm-hmm.
So I opened it up on my Kindle and it was like, you're going to be done in 2.5 hours. And I was like, I thought this, okay. So basically the idea is that there's all the worlds in the universe are kind of connected via this central unstable fantasy world that like you have to really be prepared to travel through, and certain times if you travel through it you are going to die. And so basically from different planets, as they're kind of joined in and added to like the kind of, there's like a central government of kind of the universe. They basically, you get groups called hexes, which is 6 people that each have a very specific job in this other world. They're perfectly normal people in their world, whatever normal is, because not everyone's human. And they're the ones that can travel and help people travel through
the danger
and
zone.
deal with the dangerous, going to kill you section. And the thing that attracted me to this book originally was that the main character Esther is in her 60s. And she, up until a year previous, she and her hex, which is what her group of 6 have been called, have been working. And then for reasons you don't know at the beginning of the book, they were basically exiled back to Earth and disbanded.
I remember this.
And so basically the book, like first page, because of course there's not a lot of, you got to just jump right in. Esther is woken up in the middle of the night from a distress call from her son, her adult son, who is you find out quickly, basically the guardian / keeper of Earth's pathway from the dangerous place to Earth. And so she goes to find out what's going on and finds her son's significant other and kids safely still at home. And so she calls up her hex and is like, I know we're exiled, but like, you all know my son. We need to go get him back. And the rest of it is the series of adventures. And there's a lot of, not everyone agreed with the decision that got them exiled, which was kind of Esther's idea. And so there's a lot of infighting kind of within them, but they're also like, yes, we're going to go get the son. Like this is non-negotiable. And basically you find out that the son's significant other, they rescued as part of this whole situation. And it all has to do with slavers and like this whole thing where they took out a bunch of slavers basically, but didn't have permission to do so, and then got in trouble because they didn't have permission to do so. And the significant other is actually a dragon, basically in close to human form, and a young dragon. He has now, is now the significant other of the son, and they have kids.
Yep.
But no one knows about Kai other than the hex. Like no one in the greater world does. And basically the son is taken because someone has figured it out.
Okay.
And wants the young dragon back. Because dragon politics are super complicated in this world.
Wow,
but
and she gets all that into that tiny
yeah,
book.
the amazing thing is that like, I definitely like want to read some of her longer stuff because I can only imagine with the amount of world building she did without overwhelming but also telling a really interesting story. In, I don't know, let's see how many pages. Not many. 196 pages.
That's got to go on one of my short lists.
Yeah, it's very, very impressive. And it didn't, like, even though it didn't take a long time to read, it didn't feel like I was reading. Like, it felt like I was fully immersed. And I've been having a hard time getting really into fantasy recently.
Right.
And this one, I was like, wait, we're done? Like, I really like this world.
Did you feel rushed?
I didn't feel rushed.
It felt
like
it
it really
well enough.
unfolded, because it's just the one adventure.
Yep.
And the way that she paces it is perfect.
Right.
You know, there's some open stuff at the end, you know, like not everything's 100% wrapped up perfectly, but they basically have dealt with the main problem. They've gotten the son back. They pretty much have come to an understanding about Kai, the significant other.
Right.
And they've pretty much come to an understanding about the status of the Hex and whether they're going to still be exiled, or maybe they're going to go do special jobs. So like officially exiled, but kind of allowed to do the stuff that no one else wants to do or that they can't do and publicize. So it's all kind of left a little hanging, but you know, kind of in the same way with the romances, you're like, okay, like I can see that this is all going to go kind of the way Esther wants it to go.
Right.
But at the same time, she also spends quite a bit of time talking about, she's like, yeah, like my knees hurt, and you know, maybe because a lot of the Hex she's been running with for a very, very long time.
Right.
There's a couple younger, newer ones, but for a lot of them, they've been around and been best friends for a really long time, and so there's a lot of conversations about maybe we need to be done.
You don't get too many books these days. I mean, especially adventure stories where they're older characters.
There's a very specific niche of like old people solving mysteries.
Yes, yes. Old people solve mysteries, but they don't. It's not the same as
no.
And that was really how because this was published by Tor, and that was really how Tor got me. Was they were basically like, this is basically a retired mom having to go rescue her son from dragons. Yes. Was basically like the tagline that they used at the beginning, and I was like, can't wait for that book to come out. Like, ready for it.
I think that's probably why I bought it.
Yeah,
I probably read
of
the
a
same
certain
thing.
age or something.
Killers
of
a certain age.
Yeah, that's it. They're like former assassins. And they're all in their 60s and have to like they're reactivated.
Right.
Yes.
And their knees hurt and stuff.
Yeah.
It's the fantasy version.
Yeah.
Yes, this is the fantasy version of that. So, but yeah, and I mean, it was, for the fact it is all done in within 200 pages. It is a very complete story.
That's
very fun adventure. I would be with her if she wanted to write more in this universe, but I'm also definitely have got some of her other stuff on my list, some of her longer stuff on my list now, because I was very impressed.
Yeah, that sounds good. I want to read that.
Yeah. So, well, we have a copy on the shelf.
Key for 6. Yes. All right.
What have you for us?
What have I for us? I have The Last Ranger by Peter Heller, and actually I'm just kind of using this book as, I mean, I did read it and it is good, but I'm using it partly as an excuse to talk up Peter Heller, just because every time I read him, and he is somebody that I kind of happily go to, like I don't have a ton of go-to authors. I tend to like to find stuff that is slightly new or different in some way, but he's one of those ones that I happily come back to, because he kind of has this place in, he's a literary fiction author, but he kind of has this unique spot in that pantheon that is, I don't know, feels a little different than, there's not too many other people like him. So what do I mean by that? If you look at his like fantastic fiction page or whatever, you're going to see he's listed under mystery, literary fiction, thriller. They also put sci-fi because of one book, but it's not actually sci-fi. It's really not sci-fi, which I'll talk about later. But you know, the books he writes are all of those things. They have a little bit of all of those elements in them. Again, not the sci-fi except for the one. But what stands out about him is this guy is a true outdoorsman, Peter Heller. He is he's from New York and from New England. I think he went to Dartmouth, but he's like an expedition kayaker. He's been all over the world, in all these places that I can't even pronounce, and a couple that I hadn't ever heard of, you know, running rivers, and he wrote for Outdoor Magazine and Men's Journal and the National Geographic Adventure. So, like he's the real deal. Like he knows what he's talking about. And that's in all of these books. Like that love of the outdoors, the ability to be in the outdoors and to live in the outdoors is part of all of these stories. They're adventure stories, most of them. Some more than others, some directly adventure stories. This one is a little bit more, so it's called The Last Ranger, as you can see. It's all set in Yellowstone, and Ren Hopper is, I don't exactly know why he's the last ranger. I think maybe he's sort of a dying breed, but he is a ranger in the park, and so it's all from his point of view. Heller is also a poet. He has an MFA from the Iowa Writers Workshop, which, if you don't know, is a pretty prestigious place to learn to write, in both fiction and poetry. So he's a poet, and you can see it in his descriptions of the places that he writes about. So this one is set in Yellowstone, and I mean, the descriptions are beautiful. I don't want to say he doesn't go on and on. He just,
is he very spare?
He's very spare. People often talk about him almost in terms of like Hemingway.
Hemingway, okay. I had made that connection. I don't think I've read him, but I had that sense for some reason.
No, I think if you've ever looked at the reviews on the back of his book, they often mention Hemingway, and I have to say I like some Hemingway. Hemingway is very into being macho. What Heller is not is super macho, which is why I love him. I mean, he can do all the things, but he's not going to talk about it like. So so there's a real difference in the way. I mean, he writes in like Hemingway. It's very spare in terms of like his characters don't give long soliloquies or whatever. They talk in pretty basic sentences and all that kind of stuff. But also his nature writing is like poetry. It's condensed and beautiful. So you get these amazing, in this book, there's so many beautiful vistas that you can just see. If you've ever even seen pictures of Yellowstone, even if you haven't been there, you can just see, like, as he drives through the valley, and he's just describing what he's seeing along the way. And he's a ranger, so he's also describing, the people, the crowds of people who are staring at some grizzly bear in the river or whatever.
Right.
And they're funny because he's talking about, there's some dramas. There's always going to be dramas between two like heavily armed, wealthy park visitors who are like having a standoff. There's political intrigue. There's this group called the Pathfinders who seem to believe that the park should just end because they really would like to take it over, and they don't believe there should be parks. So there's a question about what this group is doing. There's a mystery in that there's someone who is kind of taunting. Well, taunting's probably a bit of too weak of a word for that, but by taunting the park staff by trapping and killing animals, what they shouldn't be doing in the park.
Nope.
So they're trying to figure out about who's that. And you can see there's a wolf on the cover. This is particularly about wolves, and he's done a lot of research, and it's a real love story to the wolves. It's beautiful. And then there's an actual attack on Hilly, who is probably the love interest. She is the love interest in the story. And she is a wolf specialist. So, but there's an attack on her, so there's a mystery behind that too. So it's kind of like you're kind of following him through his day as a ranger while all these different things happen, and he's trying to do his job and solve some of these mysteries and sort out all the disputes between people. And so you're getting this picture of the ranger's life. There's a little bit of a romance. It's kind of a like national park soap opera. But
written by Hemingway.
Yeah.
written by Hemingway. There you go. With a kind of dramatic climax. I mean, and they're just really they have a little bit of everything, and he does that all well, which is great. I think my favorite book of his is the one that I was sort of alluding to earlier, which is The Dog Stars. And this was his first novel. And this is the one where they put it under sci-fi, but it's not sci-fi, because what it really is it's a post-pandemic story, which is a pandemic that was much worse than our pandemic, in that it wiped out a lot of actual civilization. The hero of that one is a pilot, and he has like one of the last planes around, and there are barely any towers anymore for planes to talk to each other. Like the technology has been pretty much wiped out. And it's a speculative fiction, but it also has all these other elements of that I've been talking about in him. The nature, there's a bit of mystery. This one actually has some violence in the beginning. There's a great dog in this one, and a really good love story in this one. Not all of them have love stories. The River is one that's all about two guys going, again, something that he knows well, canoeing down the river in the wilds of Canada, and there's a forest fire that's kind of about to catch up with them, and then there's a bit of a mystery involving some other people they meet along the way. So it's stuff like that. It's good adventure, really well written, easy to read. Yeah. So there's kind of nobody like him. That's why I really like to play him up.
Aside from the adventure part, it's evoking this book. I cannot think of the name of it, and I can't think of anything about it except I think the author is it Per or it's PER, which I think is like the Nordic. Is it Nordic?
Yes.
Per Patterson.
Yes, something like that.
Something like that. And it's that book takes place in the woods of like Sweden or something, and all I can remember is like a guy with a dog, and like it's the same. It feels, the writing sounds similar. It feels like it's not that nothing happens. It's just sort of quietly done. Like it's not. And this might be different.
I mean, depending. They all have different paces. Definitely, The River was very much a
faster.
Kind of, and it's an adventure. You're being chased by the fire, and
there's an adventure.
There's always some element of kind of adventure, I would say, in here. And there's like fishing and hunting, and I don't know. There's just, and then there's conservationists
the nature
as well.
Kind of aspect. I think that it was kind of ringing.
But there's not a lot of that out there. I mean, there's like Richard Powers who wrote the Overstory, which has the nature aspect, but it's not. He's maybe close, but he's also a lot bigger. Like
there's not. Yeah, I think if you think about like literary adventure,
there's not a lot.
Really, I mean, there's a lot of adventure.
I mean,
but it is something you find in kidlit.
Yes, you
but
do.
You don't find it.
You don't find it in adults. It's like who's the
Gary Paulson.
But Gary Paulson, right? I mean, it's kind of like Gary Paulson for adults-ish.
Probably a little less of the go adventure and a little bit more of everything else. But there's still that, like, without being macho, the rugged nature thing, connecting with nature.
So I would recommend this to people who like thrillers and stuff, but are willing to go, to head into the kind of the more natural landscapes. Maybe if you like westerns, you might like something like this, especially Yellowstone, because it's all set out there. So it's definitely, setting is a big, if you like books with rich settings, these are for you for sure. So that's cool. Peter Heller, definitely a favorite of mine. All right, and I think we're done. Thanks for being with us this time, and we will see you next time on Beebe Book Buzz. Goodbye.